Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. It's been a really long time since I did one with a voiceover, so kind of getting used to it again. I hope you're all doing well. Today in this video I'm going to show you the full process of my character design that I did for someone's Starfinder character. Starfinder is like a sort of D&D set in the future. It's like a role-playing game. It's actually published by Paizo, and I work quite a bit for them. So it's kind of cool to see players reach out and ask me to do their character designs for them. So that's what we're going to look at. We're gonna show you like how I do the initial silhouette, or actually I already did that, and I'm going to draw over it a bit with a loose sketch, and then we're going to slowly move into painting the full character and rendering everything out. And alongside them, I'm just going to share my thought process with you of how I make decisions or how I change things and references to use and just tips. So yeah, it's going to be quite long, but bear with me. Okay, so as you can see, I've already started. I started mostly just refining the sketch. I usually always, well, not always, but I usually, in this case, start with a silhouette, and then I do a very loose sketch over it. And then once I get that done, I sort of start refining it into a more of a final sketch that I will actually use later on to sort of color in. In the loose sketch, I try to just mark parts where I'm going to put some details, and it sort of like helps me to think of things to add to the character. In this case, there was quite a detailed description, which can sometimes be annoying because you have so many things to sort of like incorporate into the character or into the design. In this case, it was quite detailed, but it was okay. It actually helped. You know, there was some good references with it, so you sort of know what you're gonna be doing, and sort of like some rules that you have to take into mind when you start working on it. As you can see, I've started to redesign the shoulder pad, because what you can't see in the video, but there was like a phase between these two versions. I sent it off to the client, and he said, or she said, like, don't really like the shoulder pad, please change that. So that's what I did, and then I kind of landed on this one. So as you can see, I've refined the line art, and then I start making a very tight sort of silhouette beneath the line art, which just helps you to sort of like freely paint over it, so you can sort of like use it as a mask. It's just full on opacity. I sort of color in the lines, and then I make a copy of the line art, merge that with the silhouette, and then you have sort of like a very just a nice sort of mask where you can just like freely paint on without going out of it. So for me, that speeds things along quite a bit. Something to also keep in mind is coloring when you start to design your colors for the character. In this case, she was going to be a very pale, sort of androidish character. So I'm trying to keep everything very sort of dark instead of her skin and hair, so that sort of like stands out. In the end, you will see that I try to lighten up some parts and give her jacket a bit more color and stuff like that. But color should just, you need to know that like in Photoshop you can tweak so much, especially when in color, so you shouldn't be too worried too much. I think values are always much more important to get that right, and then coloring, like the program is made to tweak colors, so shouldn't be worried too much about that when you're drawing and painting. because as you know, there are so many options in Photoshop to tweak colors. You don't just have like the options for the color balancing. You see me do that as well, by the way. But there's also like adjustment masks, multiply layers, overlay layers. There's so much in there to help you find the right coloring for your character or for your painting whatsoever, photo, that you shouldn't really worry too much about that. But values are much more important. They can really make or break a painting, even a character in sort of like a white background, that what we're doing right now. It's going to be very important to have the values right, so it just looks a little bit better. There's a lot of tutorials. I think I have one on my channel as well about some studies that you can do to improve your values and what values actually are, because it was like one of those terms that you hear a lot when you're starting out as an artist. Values. But honestly, when I was like the first few years, I actually didn't really know what they meant with that. So I sometimes posted something online and then it says, well, you really have to work on your values. And I'm like, well, I'm a pretty decent human being. What are you talking about? But it's actually just like the transitions from light to dark, where your light comes from, how much that brightens up that area, in a range from white being 100 to black being 0. How do you sort of like plan it everywhere? What do you can use values to have the viewer focus on certain parts of your design or character or painting. That's very important. Of course, with a character, it's usually going to be the face that's going to be light up the most. Sometimes you can have some of her gear or clothing generate sort of like an interesting shadow, or maybe there's something in the painting or outside of the painting that is casting a shadow that is giving something to the character, where it's like everything is sort of like darkened by the shadow except for her teeth or something, or her mouth, something like that. So you can do a lot of things to help you get a cooler vibe from the painting by using values and shadows and stuff like that. But yeah, there's so many practices and videos out there on YouTube that can help you understand and practice your values, because it's going to be really important if you want to get a certain mood across or a character across. So definitely do focus on that. In this video, I'm not sure if it's going to be that important, because overall I think the lighting on this character is pretty basic. It's really just to show the design, it's not a full-on illustration. So everything is going to be lighted quite a bit just to show off who this character is, what she's wearing, and kind of sort of like the gesture is sort of like portraying some of who she is, like the way she stands and the way she's just like having her hands in her pocket. She has like a bit of a slightly confident but not so much. She has the hoodie on, which is like topped over a little bit, so she's sort of like distant, sort of like introverted. So that's kind of sort of like the character traits that were into the character. So I'm trying to incorporate that into the design. Meanwhile, the video sort of like progressed, and we've gone from coloring this the line work to painting. So as you can see, I'm now sort of like first, as I usually do, focus on the face first. Best way to do it, by the way, is not to go from one part to another part. It's best to sort of like paint overall, especially in a painting. It's much better to just like sort of paint everything at once than instead of just painting one bit at a time, because then you're going to sort of like have a difference in detailing everywhere, and it's just going to be really hard to bring everything together. In a character design or a character painting like what we're doing here, I usually sort of like get I color it, and then I put some shadowing, some very basic shadowing everywhere, so I get some get an idea of what the forms are, what is going to be lit, what not, where's the focus, you know, what are the most sort of like interesting parts of the design, what do I want to really have the viewer look at. And then I try to just like not go into full detail right away. So I am going to put a little bit of detailing, usually first in the face, just to have that sort of like as a grade to where I then want every other part of the character to be at, you know. So then you see me like detailing more and more, fleshing more and more shapes out into, like in this case, the arms, and then the chest and the jacket and the shoulder pad. And usually at last I'm going to paint the shoes, you know. That's always like the last thing I'm going to do. But before I'm there, I'm probably already going to just spend a little bit of time just like bringing that up to par with the rest. So it's sort of like being completed all at once, you know. I don't want to have the face be sort of like ready or be 100% done while the rest is at like 20%, you know. Because if you do that, then you're going to find yourself going in circles, you know. You're going to have a face that is sort of like painted at like 80-90% finish, and that's sort of like into a certain level of detail, and then you're trying to paint everything else in the same level of detail, but you will find that for some reason some parts are more detailed. So as soon as you zoom out, those things stand out, and perhaps those are the things that you don't necessarily want to stand out. So then you have to go back and either tone that down or bring the rest up to par with what is standing out, so it sort of like blends again. And if you keep doing that, then you're just going to that's just going to make you run in circles, and it's going to take way longer to paint everything instead of just doing it bit by bit, but trying to sort of like complete everything at once. That's definitely a tip that I can give you. Don't go from one piece to another piece to another piece. No, just try and do as much as possible at the same time, you know. Bring everything to that certain level of finish, so you can sort of like finish all at once. That's definitely very, very, very important. So now I think we're pretty much in the video at the part where I am going to sort of like go in for a second round, you know. First we colored it, then we sort of brought in some shadows, then we did some basic painting, and I think we did that all over the character. And now is the part where I'm going to flesh out more detail into more of the character. So I just gave some extra sort of love to the face, and I'm going to use, I think, an adjustment layer to make some shadows a bit harsher and bring up some more lighting into some other parts. I'm just going to keep redoing the whole circle, you know. It's just so that everything just keeps going smoothly, and then I sort of like know what I'm doing the whole time. Unlike doing a voiceover, you know. I'm sorry, this has been quite a while since I did the last one, and I'm sort of like narrating myself. It's kind of strange, you know. I think live streaming is easier. Perhaps if you guys rather see a live stream or something, then please just let me know in the comments, you know. Kind of want to do a bit more with the YouTube channel again, because even the very old videos still get quite a lot of responses and people reaching out to me either through YouTube or just through email and asking things. So it's kind of funny to see they're still being watched, and they're actually still being useful to some people. So thanks a lot to you guys. I will do my best to do a bit more of these tutorial videos again. If you have any requests, or if you have any questions specifically about character design or painting or concept art, whatever, feel free You know, I can always just like answer you in the comments, or perhaps it's a good topic to create another video about. So also, if you like this kind of stuff, then don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to the channel. I used to be on quite a roll with the morning sketching. I don't know if you guys seen that. It's like the daily warm-up sketches that I do, or that I used to do, and then record it and put it on YouTube. And used to do like almost 2 or 3 videos a week. That's long gone, because YouTube, like the last year, I think they changed the sort of like the monetization threshold kind of thing. So they sort of like cut me off on earning any money. I wasn't really earning anything anyway, but it's just the potential just got way harder. And I had like $74 or something set in my account, and it said that you can only withdraw it at 80. And then at $74, my channel gets demonetized. And oh man, that was just like very demotivating. And I also saw that like after that whole change happened, then a lot of my videos just like stopped being watched for some reason. They didn't really pop up in any searches, I guess. So anyway, enough about the YouTube brand. As you can see, I'm still detailing everything in the character. It's slowly coming together, you know. I'm spending some time on the jacket. I'm doing some design thingies there and making sure the sort of like the buttons are being rendered out. I'm adding the yellow just because it was too sort of gray bluish everything, so I had some color there just to stand out, same as the belts that are a bit of like a teal color or turquoise color, which also fits with her eyes and the sort of lights that are incorporated in her jacket. I think she's used to be sort of like a spellcaster kind of thing in the RPG, so then lights and stuff kind of fit, right? And because it's sort of futuristic, I think it works even better. The more straight shapes always help you, or always help to convey sort of like a sci-fi-ish vibe to it. So yeah, that's I think I'm detailing right now in sort of like the last few bits. So I'm going to go in and like spend a little bit of time on the actual tiny details, some patterns, some jewelry, which, by the way, if you want to make a character more interesting, these kind of little things, they do a lot, you know. But they do a lot for the character design, and they do a lot for bringing the painting to a whole. But if you just do that kind of stuff, you know, if you just make a character with a lot of kind of little details like this, then it really doesn't work. So it needs to be sort of like an addition to an already cool painting or a cool character design, instead of just having a lot of these kind of little details and patterns and stuff like that. Then it's just going to be a big giant mess. So don't do that. Try to have like the overall shape read well. Try to have like the overall character feel pretty good, and then when you have that done, and when you have that suit sorted, you know, you can go in and detail the tiny patterns and the tiny buttons and jewelry thingies and whatever, you know, what you see me doing. If you have a character that's just made up of complete stuff like that, then it's just going to be all over the place. So do watch out for that. I'm, by the way, using a lasso tool in these parts, because with the lasso tool, if you select a certain bit and then you color it up, then the edges are going to be really crisp, you know, going to be really sharp. So that makes it sort of like stand out, especially on those small little detail kind of thingies. Then it's actually quite useful to use a lasso tool in that case, and you just have a much easier time to make something stand out from the rest, especially when like a jacket or something, or those kind of thingies in the folds are probably have less strong edges, at least in this case anyway. That kind of depends on your style, of course. So that way it stands out easier. As you can see, I'm now finally spending a little bit more time on the legs and trying to fleshing that out. As you can also see on the right, you see that there's quite a lot of layers going on. I don't always have that. I usually work on either 1, 2, 3 layers or something. Especially when I'm painting, I sometimes just have one, because I just keep collapsing everything down into one layer, because it's, I don't know, kind of a bad habit, you know, because yeah, unless it's client work, of course, then I'm trying to keep as many layers as my computer will take, because I just don't want to be in a situation where I send something off and then they're going like, oh, you should change that, and then changing that bit would mean that I have to repaint everything. I don't want to do that. So when it's client work, I usually keep a lot more layers than doing personal work. But this is indeed also kind of like client work, right? So as you can see, I'm detailing some more of her shoes. I'm adding some of the lights that are actually incorporated in all of her clothes, pretty much, at least in her jacket and the hood. Now also adding that to her shoes. She also has those kind of lights in her eyes, by the way. But yeah, it's sort of like things like that where you make certain design elements, or these lights come back all over the character, sort of like, yeah, I don't know, kind of makes you make the character more interesting, but also sort of more believable, perhaps. But that's for everybody on their own, you know. There's a lot of different people and there's a lot of different styles. I'm not gonna say that how I do it is the best way, because I've seen people that are way better than me doing it way different ways, you know. It's just this kind of works for me. So I figured that's just do a tutorial about that, right? If you kind of like these Starfinder and Pathfinder characters, I just uploaded like last week 2 time lapses of sort of like flat colored characters. Those are more like in line with the D&D and Pathfinder genre, pretty much. And this is more sci-fi-ish, you know. I just merged everything into one layer. That way it becomes easier for me to adjust the whole thing. Something a lot of artists do, and I do too, is sometimes use an unsharp mask over the painting, and then sometimes delete or sort of like erase certain parts. But the unsharp mask makes certain edges and lines a bit more crispier, so they stand out a little bit better, which in my opinion looks sometimes better. But what we're doing now is really just detailing, or adjusting and tweaking, you know. I think I've sort of like finished the painting at this point. I'm adding some glowy lines to her face, because that was in the character description. So I'm copying that and then adding that to her neck and face, because that was part of the character. And then I think this is pretty much done, you know. I hope you've enjoyed watching this. I kind of enjoyed making it. The total time, because this is of course sped up quite a bit. The total time of painting this was about 4.5 hours. I didn't want to do the full-on video on YouTube or narrate that, because that was just, yeah, that's just too much. So I hope this sort of like is slow enough for you to follow everything, and fast enough that it doesn't become completely boring. Yeah, so if you like the video, let me know in the comments. Please do like and subscribe, like every YouTuber should say to their audience in any video. I hope you like it. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.